Welcome to PEP Talks with Eric, where we shift gears from negative feedback loops and drive towards the life we truly want. I'm your host, Eric Ayers. I believe in the power of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Together, we'll explore how connections fuel our growth and create amazing experiences. In this podcast, we'll tune out the noise of the world and tune into what we really want and what really matters. Guys, welcome to another episode of PEP Talks with Coach Eric. I'm your host, Coach Eric, and I'm super excited for many reasons for this episode. One, this is a pivotal moment in the podcast. This is episode 14, and I am privileged and honored to have our guest today. Tyler and I met a little ways back and had an amazing conversation, and I fell in love with his story because his story represents a path, a journey that sometimes we fall into by living and being, and his ability to take this journey and pivot, the momentum that's needed, the motivation, the energy needed to make that shift intrigued me. And so I've invited him to come on, and I am super excited for him to share his story with us. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's an absolute honor.
Eric, my pleasure. I feel the same exact way. I'm so excited for this conversation, and really have enjoyed getting to know you. And thanks for welcoming me on your podcast.
Absolutely, man. And I know life has been busy, so getting us together in this time is spectacular in itself. And I think divine timing is perfect. So super excited. So man, let's share your story, who you are with the world. Like, how did you get to where you are now? Where did that start?
That's a big question, so I'll try to keep it short. But yeah, so a little bit about me. Currently, am a coach, and part of the reason why I'm here today is to share a little bit of that journey of how I became a coach. Certainly was not my plan until pretty recently, but now that I'm here, absolutely loving it. Grew up small town in Pulaski, Virginia, and probably no one's ever heard of that because it is way in the mountains in the sticks, and grateful for my upbringing there. And but yeah, very, very small town, country place. And my dad was a minister, and so grew up watching him lead, preach, teach, and really then myself had a great affection and appreciation for leadership. And so I remember from a young age really being concerned with being a leader and wanting to do that. And so eventually we moved out of Pulaski and to my current hometown, the Tidewater area. So I'm near Virginia Beach, actually in Hampton right now is where I live. But we moved to this area, and from there, graduated high school, went to college, and had the opportunity to serve alongside my dad as a youth pastor. So that was my first sort of teaching leadership role. And then wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I went ahead and graduated with a degree in art and communications because I was really had some talent in art, but this call for leadership, and it just sort of naturally led me to education because I was already sort of teaching in the youth group, and how can I use my degree and my skills? And so the opportunity to teach art was just a sort of perfect combination of those things: being a leader, having a good influence over people, students, and using my skill set in art. And so that led me to education. Became an art teacher, and then wasn't quite sure if that was fully it, but first year was really hard for all my teachers out there, they know, but stuck with it, and eventually felt a call to really dive into education as a leader. And long journey. Eventually became an administrator and assistant principal, and then worked my way up to be a principal, mostly in the high school area. And from there, did that for 9 years up until fairly recently, about two and a little over 2.5 years. I left education to jump into my role as a coach, building my own personal coaching brand and business. And so it's been, yeah, just a heck of a journey.
I appreciate that. I want to highlight some things that I love that you brought up, that you witnessed leadership in your dad, and that was, kind of infused into you as a value, because that's what you saw and that's what you kind of fell into, and you started doing it naturally as you're learning. But I love the concept of learning as you do, because that's how we become proficient. And and as you were talking, I'm brought back to my healthcare career of, when we're learning something new, it's always see one, do one, teach one. And the teaching is how we become competent in this, because we're helping others get to that. And your journey to education reminded me of that, of, okay, I'm learning leadership and now we're going to teach it. But I want the listeners to understand something. How old were you, if you don't mind sharing, when you became principal?
Yeah. So, good question. I was definitely ambitious and, like I said, love leadership, and was very fortunate to jump into a pretty significant leadership role early on, because I really applied myself and worked hard. Um, but even looking back, I'm like, man, I was young, probably too young to be a principal. So I was a principal of a small private school. So I eventually jumped out of public school into the private school realm. So I was leading my own school at age 28.
Age 28. And that is powerful, because, like, to me, that showcases how amazing we as humans are when we are ambitious and have a goal, which is what we as coaches help people do, is identify the goal and what are the action steps to get there. And you prove to yourself and whoever on this journey that you were able to get there, which is fantastic and incredible and a huge accomplishment. But you said over the last couple of years is when you shifted out of that and into your journey. So share a little bit, like you described to me the first time we met, this nagging feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so if you don't mind, man, share a little bit about that, and what did that nagging feeling lead to? Like,
Yeah.
paint that
Yeah.
picture.
Thanks for bringing that up, Eric. And I think that is a really important part of this whole conversation, is that inner feeling that we all get at times. And at times it can be really easy to dismiss and ignore. And I sort of did that. And, I wrestled with that nagging feeling and tried to dismiss it, and it kept popping up every so often. So, I remember I had a pretty long commute to one of the schools I was leading, and this is probably about my fourth year being a principal, right? So by this time, the novelty's worn off. I've done some really good things. I've made some mistakes. A lot of learning in between.
Yeah.
Um, but I have young kids at home as well, and I just remember the stress of the role that I was in, and what I knew and sort of felt that was required to be successful and to meet expectations. And being a principal of the school, as one might imagine, is a huge amount of responsibility, and it's something that you can never really turn off. It's not quite like a doctor where you're always on call, but you sort of feel that way.
Right.
And so that nagging feeling and the stress and pressure of that role started to get to me. But I think even deeper, Eric, was the sense of, am am I the right now in the right season of life? Am I the right person for this kind of role? Does this fit me? And that question just popped up and nagged me. And I tried to fight it because, like you said, I worked so hard to get where I was.
Yeah.
And I really went after it, really wanted it. And now I'm having to deal with this question of, is this the right fit? So it was a little bit scary, if I'm honest.
And fear, that's kind of our recognition that something needs to change or something new is in front of us, and what do we do? And you mentioned this, you briefly hit this, is you had a family, you have a family, and at this, like, that becomes a huge decision making tool in, do we want to go after our, you know our dreams, our hopes, our, what this nagging feeling is bringing us to, and if we do, what is that going to do to the family? And like this internal dialogue, when we met the first time, this, I could feel this in terms of, this is real, and this is what people experience continuously. This is why they seek out coaches. So, like, what was the mindset shift that helped you get to take that nagging feeling to say, okay, I'm going to dance with you, I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to let you lead, because I don't know what's going on. I just know this is the way I need to go. Like, what happened internally to give you permission to do that?
Yeah. Uh, like you said, coaches can really help people who are dealing with that nagging feeling and having some inner dialogue that is a little bit hard to sort through and maybe even to swallow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did not have a coach. Yeah. And I wasn't um I had a few people to talk through about this, but I wasn't quite, I didn't have a skilled coach, for example, to help pull it out of me. So um, I'm a bit stubborn and, I definitely don't like to quit, so to speak. And so uh initially what I did was shove that thing right down and kept shoving it down and then convinced myself like, no, we're on the right path. We're going to keep moving forward. And unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way, and I encountered some big time obstacles, and the toll of the stress and things I was feeling, had an impact on my family, my personal life, and so I hate that and had to work really hard to recover from that. And um, I'm a big believer in sort of God's divine plan. And um, he he allowed me to go through some things, I think, to really shape my character, but eventually he was kind enough to where um, you know I met such great obstacles that I'm like, what is happening? And I really had to face this of like, am I doing the right thing? And he gave me a sort of a, I went through a lot of difficulties, but he gave me a soft place to land. So I kind of had this unique opportunity where I jumped out of private school into public school just as assistant principal. So now I'm no longer the principal. So I'm still very much involved in leadership and things, but at this large public school, but I had the opportunity to sit back, watch the principal of that school as I'm serving him, and then really stop and think to myself, is this what I want? Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And in that moment where I'm still very much involved in leadership, but the pressure's not as high, I was able to really be honest and have that moment of self-reflection to say, I don't think this is it. And I had heard about an opportunity to become a coach from a friend. And as he described what he does and the impact the coach can have, it just lit a fire in me, excited me. And so I decided to pursue it, go for it, and put my name out there, and was fortunate enough to get an interview and land the job.
I love that. And it's interesting. I find this very fascinating as we share our stories, as we share these, it's the pivotal moments that we remember. It's the kind of the street signs that we remember. And as we're saying it, it comes across as, yeah, this was pretty simple to do. This all lined up. But in the moment, I'm assuming like the feelings, the pulling between internal and external forces create this dilemma of, is this the right decision? And like, you describe it as knowing that's the direction to go, but the stability, the, like you're in a job that is supportive and you can be here forever. Right. Yeah. So there's that with the family. And then there's this that you're like, this is what I'm meant to do. What would happen if I don't follow this? So like, what was your first step into saying, thank you, for you beautifully described building character through experience, because like a lot of people, I'm going to pause for a second. A lot of people get to this point and they're like, well, this was for nothing. All of this, like I wasn't supposed to be in this field because I'm shifting, and they don't realize that this was needed in order to build the opportunity of what they're about to take. And that's what you beautifully illustrated. So when you're in this spot, what was your first step? Because the first step's the hardest, man. Like, every marathon starts with the first step. So what was the first step to get you in that new direction?
Yeah. Yeah. That, and so well said, Eric. Because I really have been able to look back and appreciate my journey, and it absolutely has served me so well. And I wouldn't be the man nor the coach that I am today without that previous experience. With all the challenges and difficulties I faced in that role. And even, the moments that I look back with a lot of pride and happiness that went really well. But you're right, absolutely right. I mean, my whole professional career, right out of college was education. It was all I knew. I invested so much in it. There was definitely a little bit of fear of like, how can I leave this, and so I think that first step was really just starting to ask, what if there's something out there that I'm better suited for, that my passion and my strength would have a better opportunity to shine through and to make a greater impact on the world and with people. And so just entertaining that question, I think, was the first step. And then actually practically taking the step to fill out the application, to reach out to my friends who told me about it, because he also was a coach with the organization I was applying for, and to have him put in a good word for me, tell him about me, tell him I'm really interested. So then going through with the interview, and then I really had a decision once they said that, okay, we want you. Do I take it or not? So that all of that process of just putting one foot in front of the other, but it was really fueled by that question of what if, and having a little bit of hope and faith that this was the right direction because of the inner passion and excitement that I was feeling. And so my word of encouragement to people, to your listeners, I was sort of thinking about this prior to this conversation, is if you're wondering, if you're in the career, if you're in a career that you're wondering, are you the right fit? If that question is even there, I just encourage all your listeners, don't ignore it. Because if you're even having to ask that question, there's something you need to pay attention to. And maybe you are in the right place, in the right career, in the right fit, but there's something that needs to be addressed. And I have found, being in this role as a coach, there's no doubt in my mind that this is right for me. And so it's just a beautiful place to be when you have that sense of purpose and confidence and peace in, what you're doing.
And very well said. And that doesn't mean that this comes without challenge, right? It doesn't mean that I'm living a fulfilled life and all my challenges are gone and I'm, in autopilot. No, it's like the more you do, the more challenges come, the more uncomfortability comes, and the more we're exposed to how amazing we are when we act upon our intuition, our design. And so ultimately, yes, that question of, am I in the right place? Is this the right place for me? Am I the right fit for this? To me, it shows that we're potentially misaligned with something in our life. And dude, you nailed it. Like, what if? Like, what if has the ability to take us back to our 5-year-old self to say, there are no constraints, there are no limitations. Like, what if today we build the biggest Lego building in the world, right? At that time, there's no consequences. There's nothing. And likewise, there's no consequences for us to go internally and ask powerful questions to ourselves. Because as coaches, that's what we do to clients, is ask powerful questions to get these childlike curiosity going. So tapping into curiosity is what I gained from that, is definitely like a huge first step, because it gets us out of the paradigm of the daily routine and what we have conformed to understand, and into, well, what does Eric want? Like, and what would happen if? And then we get to work all these scenarios out, and then we become curious about it. Oh, well said, man.
Yeah. I think that people who've accomplished great things with their lives and have had a lot of success and joy, I think they all have probably started with a little bit of fear initially, but pushing past that to respond to those what ifs, and uh, following that trail of curiosity. And I think that leads us to do great things. Like you said, it's sort of this just daring ability to follow what if and putting some steps in place.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. I remember like the question that was introduced to me that revolutionized the way that I saw the world was, how might we? And how might we took me out of problem focus and automatically on this journey of finding a solution together in a group. So like, how might we, what if, like all these grand questions that we don't give ourselves permission to ask. And you and I are saying, ask it. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And it's a sad state when a person looks back and has a lot of regret and wish they would have done more, experienced more, helped more people, challenge themselves. But because of the fear, they decided to settle and play it safe and stay where they are. And so I have a lot of grace and compassion, for people that who are going through that, because like I said, I stayed there for years
yeah,
and eventually, worked my way out of that. But I hope all of us are able to really become who we're meant to be and experience the fullness of that, and not allow fear to shortchange, you know, the impact and our abilities that the world needs,
yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. And I actually just yesterday I heard someone dive into fear, and they're like, the opposite of fear is love. The opposite of love isn't anger or hate. The opposite of love is fear. So if we're operating in fear, we have an inability to have love for self. And that's the dichotomy. And that is the trap that we fall into when we fall prey to fear. So I love that you brought that up. And fear is an interesting concept, because most of the time it's there to keep us, alive from a saber-toothed tiger or from a bear, or, but like, we have the ability to ask questions to calm the fear, to almost say, no, it's time for us to love, and we're going to move forward in love. And so I, again, man, I love the story. I love how you put these things together in terms of the way that the story is told. And also, like, something that came to mind is like, none of us want to arrive at our deathbed with our music still inside of us. So that's the regret, is we all have music to share and play for the world. So let's play it. Let's push the fear aside and let's play. So when we get there, we're like, man, I played all my music. Like, I'm satisfied. We're we're ready to move forward. You and I share one thing. I didn't have a coach either. I had many people that I call them my Justice League of mentors, because after asking the questions, I began to seek after those who have done it and done it well, whatever that is. And I became so curious that I would follow the life of Wayne Dyer, Neville Goddard. The list goes on and on and on. I won't bore you with that. Um, and you didn't have a coach either. This was innate knowing of, this is where I need to go. So let's change that. Like, I would love for people to reach out to you who are like, I'm in the similar situation. Like, I'm not being fulfilled. I'm CEO of my company, but I don't feel like there's not a purpose. Like, I've achieved this, but there's no purpose. How do I find value in my purpose? And what does that look like? How do they find you? And what tools, or what tool could you potentially offer them besides what we've talked about? Is there anything else that you can help them with?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And for anyone listening who's finding themselves in a similar situation of, either they're stuck in fear, or they're just now branching out, trying something new. Because I found that was a vulnerable place too, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
I pushed past fear. I'm now doing something totally different, something totally, foreign in some ways, a different career altogether than, what I was used to. Um, that's sort of a vulnerable, scary time too, because you start to wonder, like, okay, am I going to be able to do this? And am I making the right decisions? And so having a coach to work through, you know, taking the first steps, and then once you're there, continuing to believe in yourself. And I think it's really, really beneficial. And Eric, I know you believe this, and I wholeheartedly believe it. The world is a better place because of coaches. And if you've never had a professional coach work with you, whether that's a life coach, spiritual coach, executive coach, leadership coach, whatever, people who have been trained in coaching, and can do it well, I really just have so much respect and admiration for the gift of coaching, the craft of coaching. And I would love to help anyone on their journey who may be listening out there, through coaching. I've been trained through the International Coaching Federation. That was a long journey to become a skilled,
For sure.
trained, certified coach. And, I've been able to help a lot of people, in many ways, whether it's just being a better leader, communicator, taking better care of their people, managing their own inner turmoil and their own stress and fear and worries, making more confident decisions. So yeah, if you would like to work with me, and I can assist you, please find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Tyler J. Ashworth. I should pop right up. And then if you want to book a session with me, you can do that through the Zant platform. So if you go to getzant.com and then type in my name, Tyler Ashworth, my profile should pop up. You can schedule time to coach with me on that platform. But yeah, so I would think those are probably the two best ways, LinkedIn and the Zant platform. And like I said, would love to help support people out there in these decisions, with these feelings, being daring, being adventurous, following your passion and your skill set. I'd love to be a coach for you.
And we're going to have all of those, all of your links in the description to make it super easy. Guys, I highly recommend reach out to Tyler, have a conversation with him, let him help you. The beauty of coaching as it differs from mentoring and there as a therapist, it's very different. We come at it from an empathy standpoint, and I'm not saying the other ones don't, but our role as coaches, Tyler's role as a coach, is to meet you where you are and to help you move forward into the life that you want. And that involves all kinds of fun, different tools, but it's all about self exploration, self expansion, and it's all about the self journey as a holistic approach to how you interact with the world. And Tyler does this beautifully. And the amazing thing about most coaches is our journey is what sets us up to be in a place to provide professional coaching. So his journey taught him exactly what he needs to meet you where you are. And I'm looking forward to seeing the many different lives that are impacted in such a positive way by interacting with you, Tyler. So, dude, thank you for joining on this show. And before we hop off, man, what is one resource that completely shifted the way that you saw the world or changed your trajectory in the world that people can check out?
Yeah. And I just realized as you were talking, I didn't quite answer your question fully about the tool, but I would say that tool is kind of what you just mentioned before this question is authentic, powerful, transformative coaching. And there's no one way that, anybody can be coached, should be coached. It's really dependent upon the relation and connection between the coach and the client, the context, what's needed. But that tool, there's lots of different resources, that can be pulled into coaching, but the primary tool is professional trained coaching that can help people. So just wanted to follow back and answer that question fully. But to answer this question about one resource, I have to give you two.
Okay.
And I thought about this because one's a podcast, one's a book. I'm a big podcast listener as well. So the podcast that has really helped shape my outlook on what good coaching looks like and what it feels like. And for anyone who wants to experience that, I highly encourage you, especially if you've never seen or heard coaching before, experience it. This would be a great place to just learn a little bit about it. Coaching Real Leaders with Muriel Wilkinson. She is just one of the best coaches I've ever heard. She's amazing. So I've learned a lot from her, and sort of tried to shape some of my coaching after some of her techniques as well. And then the book that changed my outlook and the way I see the world 100%, just like you said, Eric, was the book Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman. And that just so beautifully expresses how people are not just consumable resources.
Yes.
But we're human beings, all with a story, all with intrinsic value. And, the business place can sometimes lose sight of that. But this book outlines how detrimental that is and how beneficial it is when we lead with that human first, people first mindset, and that just determination and belief that everybody matters and I'm going to treat people right. So yeah, those are the two I'd recommend.
I love it. I got chills when you said that book. Bob Chapman is a powerhouse when it comes to, his idea on heart counts over head counts. And this could be a conversation that we could spend hours on. So I love those. Thank you for sharing those. Please, guys, if you're listening, check those out. Check that out. It is amazing. Bob Chapman is a pioneer in the things that we should be doing. So he is bringing the Ubuntu, the I am because we are, the plural form of humanity into leadership. And it's beautiful. Awesome, Tyler. This has been fantastic, man. Any parting words before we end this today?
Yeah, just pay attention to the inner dialogue, don't ignore, what excites you. Don't ignore the things that, you have ponderings about. Don't ignore the nagging feelings that maybe make you a little bit uneasy. Those are all important signs that can lead you to a better future, a better tomorrow, and work with a coach to sort that out, because a coach is uniquely skilled and trained to be able to help move you forward. And yeah, again, it's been a pleasure, Eric. So enjoying my time with you, and thank you for welcoming me on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure. Super grateful to have you on here. My only regret is that we don't have more time, because I think we could go for hours, which I'm finding more and more, and I love it because this is amazing. But yes, just like Tyler said, don't ignore your feelings. Your feelings are it's your body signaling to you that you need to give attention to something. And this includes imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome pops up when fear introduces you to the idea that, wait a minute, you're doing something different that you're not used to. So you're trying something different. Imposter syndrome, we put a negative label on it, but it technically means you're trying something new, and that's how we expand. So if you feel like an imposter syndrome, think it. And then, as Seth Godin says, dance with it. Take that fear, do a tango with it, and instead of fighting against it, absorb it, be it, and be like, oh, cool, thanks for telling me I'm onto something new. And ask the questions. What if I go forward with this? What if I take this and take it from imposter to professional? What would that look like? And enjoy the journey, because it's definitely going to be a journey. And again, Tyler, thanks so much. Thank you, listeners. And I'm excited for the next time we get to meet. And until then, be well and be loved. Thank you for joining me on PEP Talks with Eric, where together we shift our focus, brace connection, and drive towards a more fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about where you're headed, but how you choose to travel along the way. As you continue your journey, know that you have the power to change lanes and focus on the path that leads to positivity, purpose, and connection. Let's stay connected and continue empowering your journey, one commute at a time. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. And until then, be well, be loved.